Hello everyone. Today I will tell you a movie called The Ritual 2017. Enjoy watching. The film begins with friends sitting in a pub, and they have a tradition of spending holidays together every year. They talk about where they will go this time, and their choice falls on a walk along the Royal Trail, which is located between Sweden and Norway. After leaving the pub, two friends Luke and Robert decide to get another drink at the store. But there they notice the saleswoman, who is sitting bruised on the floor, and robbers are coming out of the warehouse. Luke manages to hide, but Robert gets hit. The bandits notice him and take away his wallet, wanting to take away his wedding ring as well. Robert refuses them this, and then he is killed with a machete. It's been 6 months. The guys still went on that path in memory of Robert. Climbing a small mountain, the friends make a memoir in honor of a deceased friend and say goodbye to him. They begin to be haunted by a series of failures. First, the weather is bad, and then Dom twists its leg, and in this regard, it has an exacerbation of an old injury. Hutch and Luke decide to take a shortcut through the woods to get to the hotel faster and to help Dom. Walking through the forest, Hutch notices that it is too quiet here, and in addition, the compass is loose and points the direction incorrectly. After a while, they notice the deer's body, from which all the insides are hanging out. Friends come to the conclusion that this is probably a kind of hunting bait. Meanwhile, it had already darkened, and the weather had only gotten worse. The guys notice symbols on the bark of the tree, but they would like to know what they mean. After walking a little further, they find a hut in the forest, where they plan to wait out the night. But there is also a lot of interesting and frightening things at the same time. To begin with, there are runes hanging from the ceiling, the same ones that were carved on the tree. And when Phil goes up to the attic to find fuel for the stove, he finds a straw scarecrow without a head and who has deer horns in his hands. When the guys fell asleep, a bright light suddenly appears from the window, which forces Luke to get out of bed. When he opens the door, he finds the supermarket where Robert was killed. But at one point, all this disappears and he finds himself in the forest, with bleeding wounds on his body. Then Hutch starts screaming violently. Luke runs back to the hut and finds his friend there, who wet his pants out of fear, and in the corner lies Dom, which also had a terrible and strange dream. But the fourth friend, Phil, they find naked and dirty in the attic, kneeling in front of a scarecrow, and at the same time he reads some kind of prayer. Going out into the forest again, the friends notice that now all the trees are covered with various runes. Luke suggests that this may be a warning and suggests that they all return back to the trail. But Dom, who has a leg injury, does not agree with this idea and refuses to return there. Therefore, the guys also continue their way through the forest. Phil decides to talk to everyone about what is happening at night. But Hutch clearly doesn't want to talk about it and says that these were just nightmares and that they have more important things to do now. After walking a little deeper into the forest, they again notice a hut similar to the one in which they spent the night. But Dom says that we need to move on and not linger. Luke decides to leave his backpack and climb a small hill in order to explore the forest. But at one point, he notices a huge creature that is also walking through this forest. Horrified, he returns to his friends and tells them about what he saw, but unfortunately, they do not believe him. And then he throws out a trump card, his irrefutable proof of what he saw. He shows them his wounds, which came from nowhere on his chest. But Dom is only angry at Luke and says that it was because of him that Robert was killed in that supermarket, because instead of helping a friend, he just hid from fear. And it was because of this incident that they came to the royal path to honor the memory of their dead friend. This time, the guys decide not to try their luck in the huts and set up tents in the forest. At night, Hutch notices that Dom's leg has only gotten worse, and Phil has rubbed a blister. And because of this, he suggests that Luke look for help in the morning. But this night did not pass quietly either. Near his tent, Luke hears loud and heavy breathing. After opening it, he refuses again in that supermarket and relives the murder of his friend. And then the next tent abruptly takes off into the sky. Strong screams from Phil help him wake up. The boys discover that Hutch's tent has been destroyed and the man is not there. At this moment, his cry is heard from the forest, and with it the cry of an unknown beast. Taking flashlights, they follow the sound. In the morning, they find Hutch's body hanging from the branches of a tree, with his organs hanging out. After removing the body of a friend, they bury it under the branches of trees. The friends decide to continue on their way, but they do not notice how they are being chased by a certain creature. Luke, climbing the hill, notices the lights from the bonfires. However, after going downstairs to tell the guys about it, Phil is dragged away by a forest creature at one point. While trying to run, Luke hits his head and refuses again in the same supermarket. When he comes to his senses, he finds Dom in the roots of a tree, which is hiding from an unknown monster, which opened the hunting season. Then Luke informs him that he has found a way out of the forest, but for this they need to run fast. When they reach the trail, they find Phil's body there, which also weighs on a tree. On the way, they meet the hut again. Exhausted friends go inside, but at that moment, someone's foot hits Luke on the head. When the guys regain consciousness, they find themselves tied up, and through the cracks in the hut, they notice people who are building some kind of structure. An old woman comes to the guys. She gives Luke a drink and examines his wounds, informing and demonstrating that she has exactly the same ones. Residents take Dom away and start beating him. Then they tie him to the trunks, light their torches, and stand behind him. A roar is heard from the forest. At this point, all the people start bowing. Dom sees his wife coming out of the woods, but then he realizes it's not her, and that his gaze is directed into the eyes of a huge creature. He grabs the man and brings him to a tree, on which he hangs him. After the ritual, the woman brings Luke food and tells him about the beast-like creature, the ancient god they worship. The monster itself looks like this. It has human hands on its head. It looks like an elk, but if it lowers its head, it will look like a man without a head, with horns in his hands. Thanks to him, the inhabitants are immortal and do not feel pain. She also informs Luke about the ritual and says that he will need to bow down to him, otherwise he will kill him. Their god chose Luke because he feels the mental pain that the man keeps inside himself because he couldn't save his friend Robert in that supermarket. When he is left alone in the room, he breaks his finger and frees himself. Going up to the second floor, he finds a lot of dry bodies, similar to mummies, which begin to barely move, because of their immortality they cannot die. And then Luke sets them on fire so that they can finally calm down. Going down to the bottom, he hits an old woman who noticed him. After finding a gun, he loads it and kills one of the residents in self-defense. Taking the axe in his other hand, he heads for the exit. But a creature is already waiting for him there. Luke, undeterred, runs to the back exit and knocks down the door, thereby ending up on the street. Running back to a safe distance, he shoots at the beast-like monster. And at that moment, he gets back to that supermarket, but only now he is in the middle of the forest. Trying to run past the shelves, the monster gets ahead of Luke and attacks him. Then the man hits him on the head with an axe and runs away towards the exit from the forest. The monster, stopping at the edge of the forest, begins to scream with all his might. Luke shouts back angrily and then walks away.